Australian dealer forecourts in 2026 are stacked with new tractors across dozens of brand names. Some backed by national dealer networks, factory support programs, and 50 years of Australian paddock history, and some backed by little more than a shipping container and a mobile number. The gap between those two categories is measured not in horsepower, but in what happens 12 months after the machine leaves the forecourt. Three brands in the current Australian market represent real purchase risk, not because the engineering is necessarily poor, but because the support infrastructure to keep the machine working simply does not exist in any meaningful form here. Five brands represent the opposite case, with documented sales volume, parts networks, and post-sale support that the data consistently confirms. We are counting all 8 down, starting with the 3, to approach with extreme caution, and we start with the 1 generating the most documented complaints in the Australian machinery discussion. In the first of 3 caution positions, the pre-2018 grey market Photon Euro Leopard deserves specific identification before anything else is said. Because the Photon name covers a range of machines with very different support situations in the Australian market, and conflating them causes real purchasing errors. We are specifically talking about the pre-2018 grey market Photon Euro Leopard models imported independently into Australia without an official distribution network, not the current official Lovol lineup, which is a completely different story with a different support structure and which is addressed separately in other content on this channel. The pre-2018 Euro Leopard units arrived in Australia through informal import channels, sold at prices that looked competitive on paper against machines with active dealer networks, and generated a documented pattern of complaints on product review, Commerce.au and in Australian tractor discussion forums that is consistent and specific. The complaints center on 3 things. First, parts. The pre-2018 Euro Leopard used components sourced from multiple Chinese suppliers without a unified parts identification system, meaning that a part number from the owner's manual frequently does not correspond to a stocked item anywhere in Australia. Independent workshops contacted by owners of these machines routinely report spending more time identifying the correct part than performing the repair, and frequently concluding that the part simply cannot be sourced locally in a reasonable time frame. Second, warranty. These machines were sold without the backing of an Australian registered distributor, with warranty obligations enforceable under Australian consumer law, meaning that post-sale problems had no formal resolution pathway. Third, resale. Listing data from Australian agricultural marketplaces shows pre-2018 Euro Leopard models trading at significant discounts to their original purchase price within 2 to 3 years of sale, reflecting the market's accurate assessment of their ongoing support situation. The cost implication of this support gap is not hypothetical. Independent workshop data from technicians who have worked on these machines places the diagnostic and sourcing cost for a mid-level hydraulic fault, a situation that would cost approximately 400 to 600 Australian dollars to resolve on a machine with active part support, at 1,200 to 2,400 Australian dollars on a pre-2018 Euro Leopard, simply because of the time cost of identifying and sourcing the correct components. The machine's original purchase price saving relative to a supported competitor is typically consumed by the first or second repair event of any meaningful complexity. In the second caution position, the generic Jinma tractor, sold in Australia under various rebadged configurations through independent importers without consistent brand representation, presents a support situation that parallels the pre-2018 Euro Leopard in its practical consequences. The Jinma is a Chinese agricultural machine manufactured by Jiangsu Yueta Group in various configurations and sold globally, frequently under rebadged names, at price points well below the comparable horsepower bracket from established brands. In markets with active Jinma distribution networks, parts of South Asia and Africa, the machine has a functional support infrastructure. In Australia, That infrastructure does not exist in any organized form. Parts for generic Jinma units in Australia are sourced through a combination of direct China import, informal reseller networks, and occasional overlap with compatible components from the broader Chinese tractor market. A process that experienced independent workshops describe as unreliable in both timing and component quality. A farmer facing a transmission fault on a generic Jinma in regional Queensland has no dealer to call, no national parts warehouse to access, and no warranty pathway that carries enforceability under Australian consumer law. The total cost of ownership for one of these machines, properly accounting for repair sourcing costs and potential downtime, regularly exceeds the cost of purchasing a supported alternative at a higher entry price. Known issues reported for generic Jinma units in Australian conditions include hydraulic pump seal failure at around 1,000 to 1,500 hours, earlier than the equivalent interval on supported competitors, and PTO shaft bearing wear at around the same interval, both of which are manageable repairs on a machine with an active parts network and considerably less manageable on one without. A hydraulic pump seal kit on a supported machine costs approximately 160 Australian dollars through an independent workshop. The equivalent repair on a generic Jinma can take 2 to 3 weeks and cost 3 to 4 times as much simply in sourcing time. In the third caution position, the Chery agricultural tractor without an active Australian reseller represents a narrower but equally real risk in the current market. Chery, distinct from the Chery automotive brand, has produced agricultural equipment marketed into various international markets, with some units reaching Australia through informal import channels during periods when the brand did not have an established Australian distributor. The absence of an active reseller with warehouse stock and service obligations in Australia creates the same support gap that characterizes the first two caution positions. No reliable parts pathway, no warranty enforcement mechanism, and a resale market that prices in the support gap accurately. For any tractor from any brand that lacks an active Australian distributor with physical parts stock and documented service capacity, the risk profile is the same regardless of the engineering quality of the base machine. An engine that runs reliably for 3,000 hours creates no financial risk. An engine that needs one repair at 1,500 hours on a machine with no parts pathway creates a crisis. The caution positions in this countdown are not assessments of engineering quality. They are assessments of the support infrastructure that determines whether a repair is a manageable expense or an ownership-ending event. With the 3 caution positions established, relief arrives in the form of 5 brands with the documented sales volume, parts infrastructure, and post-sale support to make ownership in the Australian market a straightforward proposition rather than a risk calculation. We start at position 5 of the best, and the case for supported brands only gets more compelling from here. In 5th place among the recommended brands, New Holland's position in the Australian market is built on a combination of CNH Industrial's national infrastructure and a product range that covers the utility and mid-range segments where the majority of Australian farm machinery purchasing decisions are made. New Holland Australia, operating under the CNH Industrial umbrella alongside Case IH, maintains dealer representation across all major agricultural regions and a parts supply chain that operates at the speed the Australian farming calendar demands. According to TMA sales data, New Holland maintains consistent market share in the utility tractor segment, the 50 to 120 horsepower bracket, which reflects sustained buyer confidence rather than promotional peaks. Known weak points on current New Holland utility models in Australian conditions include the front linkage position sensor, which can produce fault codes in dusty operating conditions at around 2,000 hours, diagnosis and replacement costs approximately 320 to 380 Australian dollars through an authorized dealer, and the rear axle oil seal on 4-wheel drive configurations, which benefits from inspection at around 2,500 hours, with replacement costing approximately 240 to 280 Australian dollars. Routine service every 600 hours on the new Holland T5 series costs approximately 160 to 180 Australian dollars through an independent workshop. Fuel consumption in the 100 horsepower bracket runs at approximately 7 to 8 liters per hour under moderate load. Warranty terms for New Holland Australia should be confirmed with the CNH industrial dealer at point of purchase. In fourth place among the recommended brands, Case IH brings a different dimension to the same CNH industrial infrastructure, a specific and deep penetration of the Australian broadacre grain belt that translates into parts availability, workshop familiarity, and resale confidence in the regions where grain growing defines the farm equipment discussion. According to TMA sales data, Case IH's position in the over 100 horsepower segment in Australia is among the strongest of any brand, reflecting decades of broadacre investment and a dealer network calibrated to the seasonal demands of Australian grain harvest. Independent workshops in the Riverina, the Eyre Peninsula, and the Western Australian wheat belt consistently rate Case IH as one of the most practically supported brands in their region, not because the machines are without fault, but because the support system for addressing faults is organized and reliable. Known weak points on Case IH Puma series machines in Australian conditions include the transmission electronic control unit, which can develop intermittent faults in high vibration broadacre conditions at around 2,000 to 2,500 hours. Diagnosis and ECU replacement costs approximately 800 to 1,200 Australian dollars through an authorized Case IH dealer, and the front axle shaft seals on four-wheel drive models, which merit inspection at around 2,000 hours, with seal replacement costing approximately 210 to 260 Australian dollars. Routine service on the Puma series every 250 hours costs approximately 170 to 190 Australian dollars through an independent workshop. Warranty terms for Case IH Australia are specific to the Australian market and should be confirmed with the CNH industrial dealer at purchase. In third place among the recommended brands, Massey Ferguson's consistent presence across the TMA sales data in the utility segment reflects a combination of brand recognition, AGCO Australia dealer coverage, and an aftermarket parts supply chain that operates at a depth few competitors can match across the full age range of machines in the field. Independent workshop discussions consistently identify Massey Ferguson as a brand where sourcing options exist for machines of almost any age, a practical advantage when a fleet includes machines from multiple generations, as is common on established Australian properties. Fuel consumption on the MF6 series in the 100 to 115 horsepower bracket runs at approximately 7 to 8 liters per hour under moderate load. Service costs and known weak points are consistent with the data examined in the earlier comparison in this series. Warranty terms for Massey Ferguson Australia should be confirmed with AGCO Australia at purchase. In second place among the recommended brands, John Deere's position in the Australian market requires the same precision it did in the broadacre context examined earlier in the series. The brand is the dominant name in high-horsepower broadacre machinery in Australia by TMA sales data, and that dominance is earned through a combination of precision, agriculture integration, large frame engineering, and a national dealer infrastructure that is designed around the demands of large-scale grain, cotton, and mixed farming operations. The caution raised in other content on this channel about John Deere's software lock architecture and repair cost exposure in the medium frame segment is real and documented. In the context of a recommended brand assessment, John Deere belongs in this list because its dealer network, factory support, and resale value profile are among the strongest in the Australian market across the segments where its machines are most used. Known weak points and cost data are addressed in detail in other videos in this series and are not duplicated here. And finally, in first place among the recommended brands, Kubota's position at the top of the TMA compact and utility sales data, confirmed across multiple reporting periods, reflects a purchasing decision that tens of thousands of Australian farmers have made independently and arrived at the same result. Parts availability through over 140 dealer and service points nationally, engine longevity documented in independent workshop records at 5,000 hours and beyond, and a total cost of ownership in the sub-100 horsepower segment that consistently undercuts the premium alternatives. These are not marketing claims. They are the reasons that independent workshops, clearing sale auctioneers, and experienced property managers across Australia reach for the same brand name when the question is straightforward and the budget is finite. Across all 8 brands examined in this countdown, one truth is stark. The gap between a tractor brand with active Australian distributor support and one without is not a gap that shows up in the horsepower figure or the seat comfort rating. It shows up in what happens when the machine stops at a critical moment, and whether the path back to working order takes a day or a month. Sometimes the most expensive tractor on the property is the cheap one without a dealer behind it. If this breakdown changed the way you approach a brand name without an immediately obvious support structure, hit subscribe, leave a like, and share it with someone who is currently shopping at the bottom of the price range. Tell us in the comments which brand you would add to either list, and what experience on your own place drives that